The 10 most inaccessible fortresses in the world. Bled Castle, Slovenia. One of the most inaccessible structures in the world can be found in Slovenia. Here, on top of a 130-meter cliff, stands the ancient Bled Castle. It is one of the oldest castles in Slovenia. Bled Castle is located in an incredibly beautiful area next to the lake of the same name. The rocky cliff on which it stands literally overhangs the lakeshore and is surrounded on all sides by dense forest. And what is most amazing is that such a structure was built in such a hard-to-reach place at least 1,000 years ago. The first official mentions of the castle date back to the year 1004. Over so many centuries, the castle changed owners dozens of times. There were minor and major earthquakes that partially destroyed it, but throughout its entire existence, there is not a single mention of any military action near the castle's territory. And that is no coincidence, because thanks to its location, the fortress truly is extremely difficult to access. Not only is it protected by the lake on one side, but on the other side there is also a very dense forest. Trotsky Castle, Czech Republic. In the vicinity of Prague, there is an amazing and mysterious fortress, Trotsky, which for hundreds of years was considered the most impregnable in the Czech Republic. The castle was built in the rocks, or rather between the two craters of an ancient extinct volcano. The builders did not ignore the craters themselves either. The fortress towers were placed in them. From the outside, the fortress looks truly impressive, and the forest surrounding the area, set against the backdrop of huge rocks, adds even more atmosphere. And of course, the view from the top of each tower is simply incredible. It is absolutely breathtaking. Despite the fact that the first official mentions of the fortress date back to the end of the 14th century, historians believe that it was built much earlier. Over the centuries, the fortress managed to successfully repel any siege by Swedish invaders, but when the wars ended, the fortress was no longer needed. It remained abandoned for several centuries until the 19th century, when one of the influential people of that time restored it. From that moment on, Trotsky Castle became one of the most romantic and artistic places in the Czech Republic. It was visited by dozens and hundreds of painters and poets, and all because one of the towers, called the Maiden Tower, offers a bird's-eye view over the entire surrounding area. Today, this place is fully open to visitors and serves as a tourist attraction. The town of Pitigliano, Italy, the most inaccessible town in the world, can confidently be called the ancient town of Pitigliano, located in picturesque Tuscany, Italy. This ancient town was literally built on cliffs. The stone buildings and defensive walls form a single whole with the steep rocky crags. According to historical records, the settlement was founded by the Etruscans hundreds of years ago. They deliberately chose a high hill for construction, surrounded on three sides by inaccessible cliffs, in order to maximize their safety. The ancient structures, which include the town's towers and walls, are located at elevations from 300 to 600 meters above sea level. Many buildings and fortification walls have been very well preserved to this day. The remarkable town of Pitigliano has been living its own life for many centuries and is considered one of the most picturesque places in Tuscany. Travelers who are not afraid to make the long journey and climb the high hill will have the opportunity to stroll through fabulously beautiful medieval streets and see many unique sights. Liechtenstein Castle, Germany. In Germany, among the inaccessible and mesmerizing Bavarian Alps, one can find the amazing Liechtenstein Castle. It is located atop one of the steep rocky cliffs at a height of about 817 meters. The mountainous Hanau region where the castle stands is considered one of the most picturesque areas in all of Germany. Here, inaccessible cliffs alternate with incredibly beautiful forests. At first glance, it is hard even to imagine how one could climb to the top of the rock and enter the grounds of this ancient castle. To get inside this unique landmark, one must first climb into the mountains by a steep stone staircase and then cross a suspension bridge laid over a gorge. This ancient castle holds many interesting secrets. For example, the lower levels of the structure were actually carved directly into the rock. Many travelers also recommend visiting this place specifically in autumn and spring. Pena Palace, Portugal. In Portugal, Pena Palace is considered a landmark of national importance. Externally, the palace resembles a classic medieval castle. But what is most surprising is that its actual age is barely more than 150 years, which, by the standards of such structures, is no age at all. Originally, there was a small old monastery on the site where the castle now stands. By the time construction began, it had already been abandoned for many years, so nothing stood in the way of building such a magnificent structure. At present, the palace has been partially turned into a museum, fully open to tourists, and what is most interesting is that the atmosphere inside the buildings is now exactly the same as it was in its heyday. In other words, tourists who visit this place will walk through the very same rooms and halls where kings and queens walked 100 years ago. Phuktal Monastery, India. In India, one of the most inaccessible and isolated structures is Phuktal Monastery. This isolated Buddhist monastery was founded back in the 12th century. It was built on the slope of a high rocky cliff. At first glance, it may seem that the buildings could collapse at any moment, but in fact, the monastery has existed for more than 800 years. Even now, about 70 monks live there, but the monastery can only be reached on foot via a secret mountain path that would be almost impossible for an unprepared person to find. One of the main features of the architectural complex is the natural cave located above it, which is also interesting to visit and hides many mysteries. Although the monastery is now open to tourists, it has not lost its unique character. But there is one small downside. The route to this place is entirely on foot, and it usually takes travelers more than 2 days to reach the monastery. Predjama Castle, Slovenia. Our list today has already featured one of Slovenia's castles, but it turns out there is another amazing castle there, one of the most inaccessible on the planet, Predjama Castle. It was built into a rock face at a height of 123 meters. This castle was built more than 700 years ago. Over many centuries, it belonged to various knightly orders, and knightly tournaments were held there more than once. Despite its difficult location, in the 17th century, skillful robbers managed to enter the castle and take away many valuable items. After that, the castle's owner decided to build only one secret entrance into the castle, and for many years, only the chosen few could enter it. Unfortunately, the secret passage has not survived to this day. Modern visitors have only one way to get into the castle grounds, by passing through the upper route, which begins high in the mountains and runs through the forest. But there is a small drawback. The caves located on the way to the castle now serve as a shelter for an entire colony of bats. Therefore, when the cold season comes and the local inhabitants go into hibernation, visits to this place are prohibited. Monastery of St. George of Chosiba, Israel. In Israel, too, there is a structure that is literally not easy to approach. The Monastery of St. George of Chosiba is considered one of the oldest Orthodox monasteries in the world. It is located in the Wadi Kelt Valley among the expanses of the Judean desert. The monastery building was constructed on the slope of a sheer cliff. The nearest settlement to the monastery is the ancient city of Jericho. They are separated by about 5 kilometers. Today, however, the site is a tourist destination and various roads have been laid to the monastery, making it no longer difficult to reach. Previously, the monastery was an extremely inaccessible place, inhabited exclusively by monks. Mont Saint-Michel Abbey, France according to legend, Mont Saint-Michel, then still an abbey, was founded by order of Archbishop Aubert back in the year 709. As the story goes, the Archangel Michael appeared to the Archbishop 3 times in a dream and ordered him to build a castle on a rock rising above the sea. Today, this small rocky island has been completely transformed into an island fortress on the northwestern coast of France. And what is most amazing is that at certain times of the year, the tide comes in and covers the entire area around the castle with water for many kilometers, making the castle truly inaccessible. And in the end, just look at the size of this structure and all its power. It is not only one of the most inaccessible castles in the world, but also one of the largest and most majestic. In 1874, it was recognized as a historical monument, and in 1979, UNESCO added it to the World Heritage List. Potala Palace, Tibet in Lhasa, among the picturesque Tibetan mountains, stands the famous Potala Palace. It is the highest ancient structure on the planet. The palace is located at an elevation of 3,767 meters above sea level. The summit of Mapo Ri Hill was chosen as the site for the palace. Potala Palace is the largest monumental structure in Tibet. It completely occupies the summit of the hill and its slope. The height of the multi-level building is also quite impressive and amounts to 170 meters. Potala is a complex palace structure which, in addition to the royal palace itself, also includes a large temple complex. The total area of the building is 360,000 square meters. For many years, the palace remained the main residence of the Dalai Lama. And for Buddhists, Potala Palace still holds enormous religious significance today. To the broader circle of tourists, it is known as a fascinating museum. And this is not surprising at all, because in the 17th century, the best craftsmen from Tibet, China, and Nepal were invited to build the palace. Well, that is probably where I will finish. Which of these castles did you like the most? Write your opinion in the comments. Bye.